Welcome everyone, I'm Kingly Valence, and thanks for watching this fun Spore video. Today, we are playing as an actual plant in Spore. This isn't just a creature that looks like a plant, no. We are really playing as a piece of flora in Spore. And we can play as custom or Maxis made plants during creature stage, and all the other stages as well. And we can technically play as a plant with only using Cheat Engine without any other mods. Which means playable plants are built into the game and have always been possible. We just needed Cheat Engine to remove the artificial limit set by Maxis to get this to work. And with the right setup, we can fully play and evolve through creature stage, socializing and fighting with normal creatures. To get this to work, we first need to enter the Flora Editor. This Flora Editor is already built into the game, but to access it, we need to add --Flora Editor to the launch target. Place that in right after the launch target in a shortcut, or in Steam, right-click Spore and add --Flora Editor into the advanced launch options. Then launch Spore, and we'll be immediately brought into the Flora Editor. This is the exact same process we use to enter the secret cell editor with all the extra cell parts. But for the Flora Editor, I recommend using the base game without Galactic Adventures for now. When running with Galactic Adventures, we'll just get a black screen, so if this is happening, make sure to switch to just normal Spore. But the Flora Editor is pretty jank and unfinished, even when appearing correctly. But all we need for now is just to save a Flora creation to get a plant PNG. So we can just put down anything and give it a name. And very important, every time we save a Flora creation, make sure to add the GA prop tag below the description. This will make sure our new Flora creation won't get used as a regular plant on the planet when playing through the stages. Our custom plant appearing in-game can cause issues, and deleting custom plants from the Sporepedia is really difficult, so make sure to keep lots of backups of your Spore saves when trying this. Now we have our beautiful plant, but the Flora Editor won't let us save. By using Cheat Engine, we can force Spore to save, and this will exit the editor and finish loading up Spore like normal. Bringing up the My Spore Creations folder from the Documents folder, and we can see our custom Flora was indeed saved in the Plants folder. This Plants folder normally never gets used, but Spore still has the built-in functionality to use it. And yes, all creation types in Spore are saved as PNGs. Now that we have a Flora PNG, we can enter the Flora Editor again from the main menu, without needing to relaunch the game. Loading up the Create menu, and there isn't a Flora Editor we can directly launch into, but entering any editor from here, and dropping in a different PNG creation type will switch us into that editor. For example, from the Creature Creator, dropping in a Military Land Vehicle PNG will automatically switch us into the Tank Editor. And even though there isn't explicitly a Cell Editor in this menu either, dropping in a Cell PNG brings us into the Cell Editor too. And finally, dropping in our Plant PNG once again switches us into the Flora Editor as well. Switching into the Flora Editor with a Plant PNG is the easiest way to re-enter the Plant Editor from here without needing to relaunch the game every time. But since there was no Flora Editor button in the main menu, the only way to get here is with a Plant PNG, which we don't normally have. We needed to use the special Launch State Plant Editor first in order to get our initial Plant PNG. But now as long as we keep a Plant PNG, we can always keep using it to get back to the main menu Flora Editor instead of needing to use the Launch State version. Now we can get our amazing plant creation into creature stage. But now that we have our plant, it's very important to now switch to using Galactic Adventures before actually loading up any stage. The GA prop tag only works when running with Galactic Adventures to prevent this plant from showing up as an actual plant on the planet, since the base game doesn't know how to use the GA prop tag. From here, to get our playable plants into creature stage, we'll need to use Cheat Engine again. Loading creature stage from the main menu, and this loads us into the early creature editor. Now we need the memory address that controls what editor Spore thinks we're in, and I've shown how to get all these memory addresses in a few previous videos. And this memory address controls the editor type and will list the corresponding value for each editor. This is the value for the early creature editor, which allows dropping in early creature PNGs into the editor. And I went through and found every value for every editor and put them into a spreadsheet. And using Cheat Engine, we can change what editor Spore thinks this is by swapping this value for something else. This won't visually change what editor we're in, but it will change what PNGs are now accepted into it. For example, changing this value to the Military Land Vehicle will now allow us to drop in tanks into this editor. And we can change this value to anything else we'd like. And here's the value for the Flora Editor, and now we can drop our plant creation into this editor. Spore is now very confused there's a plant in here and won't let us save. But once again, using Cheat Engine to save, and our plant is now swimming up to the surface into creature stage. Loading up creature stage, and we are in the dark because we are just a plant body with no creature parts. We are basically the same as the nothing Pitiful worm with no creature abilities. We did show it is technically possible to still beat creature stage like this, but that's not necessary for this video. Going back into the early creature editor with our plant loaded in, we can actually put on the creature parts from these pallets onto our plant. This does look super cursed, but it will work to give us creature abilities on our plant. And now we can see and socialize and fight with other creatures. But this is about as far as we can get just using Cheat Engine in Vanilla Spore. The Flora Editor doesn't work very well in Vanilla Spore, and to get more complicated plants into the game, we'll need this amazing mod by AZSay to fix the Flora Editor. Loading into the Flora Editor again with the mod, and it's fully working. Using the Flora Editor now, and we can make some incredible custom plant creations. And huge shout out to Irish Soup Can for making these amazing plants for me to show off for this video. This unlocks another whole world of creativity for Spore, and these are some beautiful Flora creations. And with the mod, we can also load up some Maxis made plants, save these individually to obtain their PNGs, and bring them into creature stage as well. Most plants will still work without the mod as well, but they'll just look like sticks without any leaves. But the mod makes this work a whole lot better, and restores the rest of the foliage. Bringing these into creature stage, and we'll hide the eyes and other parts to not ruin the plant look, and we'll have fully working, beautiful plants to play with. I did find that some plants don't fully appear correctly in creature stage, but this seemed to work for most of the plants that I tested. Not sure why some of the plants still didn't want to work. Maybe their plant body was too complicated to render. Speaking of too complicated, the complexity meter can be an issue when trying to play as a plant. The plants hit the creature complexity meter limit incredibly fast. What may appear fine in the Flora editor might be too much for the creature creators. And using the freedom cheat doesn't work when using a mid-game editor linked to a stage. However, the complexity meter is really just another arbitrary limit set by Maxis, and is actually set far lower than what Spore's game engine can truly handle. And for some of these plants to put on additional creature parts, I used a couple of mods by Valachan and Zarklord to completely remove the complexity meter. Not just to raise the meter to the maximum possible, but so that it's completely gone. Spore's game engine can handle 255 items and nodes on a creation, but going above this amount will crash the game. But at least for these plants today, we seem to be well within the game engine limits, but just above what Maxis set for the complexity meter. Another thing to note about playable plants is that entering the mating editor during creature stage will reset us back to the default creature again, so we are limited to just what we start with when coming out of the ocean. However, thankfully, like Evoadvantage, when using Cheat Engine, we aren't just limited to what we can put on during the early creature editor. This way, we aren't stuck to just bite and sing level 1 for all of creature and tribal stage. But just using the Evoadvantage cheat itself still won't work for plants. But with Cheat Engine, we can still start creature stage with the full creature creator. This will use the final 2 memory addresses, which control what stage is about to load. If we first select space stage and choose create a creature, we get the full creature creator like normal. Then swap the editor address value, so Spore now allows dropping in plant creations, and now we can build whatever plant creature we want, including level 5 abilities. Use Cheat Engine to save, and we're back to the space stage menu. But before loading into space, using the last 2 memory addresses, we can tell Spore to load into creature stage or any other stage we want instead. 5 represents space stage, but the other stages go 0 for cell stage, 1 for creature stage, 2 for tribal, and 4 for civilization stage. And 3 is just nothing. Swap both addresses values to 1 for creature stage, and now we have our fully evolved plant going into creature stage Evoadvantage style, so we don't have to depend on the mating editor anymore. Putting mouths and creature parts on a plant looks a bit silly, so for a full plant playthrough of Spore, let's use a plant that naturally has a mouth, like a Venus Flytrap. Again, thanks to Irish Soup Can for making these, and we can start a full game from cell stage as a plant with our little baby Flytrap as a sentient plant evolving on a world meant for creatures. Who would have thought we'd be playing as a plant in cell stage, evolving our way to reach the center of the galaxy? It's amazing how liberating Spore can be once we start using Cheat Engine with a couple of mods to remove Maxis' imposed limits. And it's incredible how much more Spore can actually handle that's not normally available to us. From getting the Groks into cell stage, to Galactic adventure captains in creature stage and tribal stage. Spore is such a marvel, and I'm so thankful to everyone for coming along this journey of discovery with me. And I'm always wondering what else is possible. Our Venus Flytrap has had enough of these tiny cells, it wants to photosynthesize on the surface. And this carnivorous plant isn't just waiting for the creatures to fall into their trap, our Flytrap will actively seek out these creatures and attack, but also learning from the other creatures how to make friends along the way as well. As the one plant in the galaxy that evolves like a creature. We can attack, eat, and socialize with these creatures, and continue to evolve through creature stage, making it to the next evolution marker, and our baby Flytrap evolves into a full-size Venus Flytrap. for even more abilities and continuing to progress through creature stage. And we can play through the rest of the stage just like normal, of course with the ridiculousness of knowing we're a plant. Our plant gained the intelligence to form a tribe, and stayed a carnivore to avoid cannibalizing their own kind. Our Flytrap won't eat any of their own plant brethren, but instead likes the taste of fish. And just like the other creatures on this planet, our Flytrap evolved the ability to play wind instruments like the didgeridoos, and the tribal creatures accept our instrument playing plants as allies just like one of their own kind. But little did the rest of these creatures know, our Flytrap's goals were beyond their understanding. After allying all these creature tribes, our Flytraps led the development of cities for all plant kind, and plants are now the only species to evolve into civilization stage on this planet. And our Flytraps are spreading their plant religion to the rest of plant society, leading to the first plant-centric planet in the Spore galaxy. The Flytraps are now heading into the stars, and to let others know of their unique triumph, they modeled their spaceship after themselves, which we're able to do once again by dropping in our plant PNG with the help of Cheat Engine into the spaceship editor. The plant body doesn't appear correctly while in the editor, but once in space, we can see a bit more of the body return again, and our Venus Flytrap plant is our spaceship as well. This allows our Flytrap to reach the galactic core at the center of the galaxy and gain the Staff of Life, showing and inspiring millions of other plant species that they're not just limited to only reaching up to the stars while being rooted into the ground, but they too could one day break free from the surface and live among the stars as well. And that's how to play as a plant in Spore. Again, massive thanks to AZC, Irish Soup Can, Valachan, and Zarklord for the mods and making these plant creations. And they'll all be linked in the description so you can play with these for yourself. Let me know what else you'd like me to try in Spore, and what other wacky creation types you'd like me to try to make playable in the future. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Kingly Valence, and I'll see you next time.